Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Empowering Musicians podcast. I am your host, Michael Manley, and this week's topic is auditions, the audition game and how to truly win. Now, I have a very pertinent experience that feeds so well into this topic, and it has to do with the fact that I'm doing this on a Sunday and not my typical Saturday. Yesterday, I went through with my live launch, was really excited to get into the audition topic, noticed that I didn't have a ton of viewers and people were coming in and popping out. And my good friend Matt Lucier had the sense to message me in my comments about 6 or 7 minutes in that he couldn't hear anything. And it was because my mute button was on. So I had muted myself, and the software I use by StreamYard does not, unlike Zoom, let you know that you're muted. So I was simply talking into a void for 7 minutes. And instead of just unmuting myself and starting over, I decided to end the broadcast and try to relaunch it. The way StreamYard works, you actually have to plan the stream in advance. So I had to rejigger it so that we're doing it today. And so I thought to myself, well, that was kind of a huge fail. And I thought, how appropriate to talk about auditions where we have to really learn to embrace failure, right? And failure is a word that we all have a lot of negative feelings around. But if you think about a typical audition process, if you're an actor or you're a musician, or you're in any kind of performance, even sports, you're in any kind of performance field, right? There's going to be a lot of failure, right? 100, 200, 300 people take an audition. One person may get the job and 299 might fail. So if we are not comfortable with embracing failure, then we really are setting ourselves up for a lot of stress and anxiety and kind of not a fun time with our art, right? So today's topic is one of the, I guess, most dreaded and stressful kind of things we can put ourselves through, which is the audition process. And whether you're a musician, an actor, an athlete, or interviewing for a dream job, this sort of audition or interview process is very stressful and can lead to a lot of worry and negative self-talk if we don't approach it with the right mindset. So I don't think anybody has ever said, I really love taking auditions, or I love job interviews. But if we are actors or musicians, again, and we are taking auditions and preparing for performances for most of our lives, then if we don't love auditions and if we don't love performance, if we only have anxiety around those two things, then what are we doing, right? There's a lot easier ways to succeed in life, and certainly more lucrative ways than to play music or act or sing or be an athlete of whatever sport you're in. There are many other easier paths, right? So we're doing this because we have a passion for it. And that passion has to feed everything we do, even the audition process. So what is the typical mindset and thinking around auditions? Well, I would say it is that we have an intention to win, right? We all go into an audition saying, I'm going to get this job, right? Isn't that what we want? Why else would we go through the hundreds of hours of practice if winning a job wasn't the goal, right? Or wasn't the intention? Well, the problem with this is that winning or landing a job or playing a perfect performance is a goal, and it cannot be an intention because it's outside of our control, and it's in the future. And we're going to unpack that a little bit later. And what happens when we just have this intention to win? Well, we see anything less than winning as failure, and we approach that audition or that interview not as a competition, not as a performance. And while auditions and interviews and all of these things are competitive, they are not competitions. We're not actually competing against other musicians when we take an audition. This is something that a lot of people don't stop to consider, right? Many times orchestras will have an audition and they won't even fill a spot because for whatever reason on that day, the committee didn't love any one candidate enough to have confidence in them to offer them employment. So we're truly not competing against each other, right? If an orchestra can go through an entire audition process and not fill a chair. So remember that we are in a competitive market, but we are not in competition with each other. That's really important. And we take ourselves out of showing our best selves, out of making music, and aim instead for perfection and correctness. So I like to refer to this as playing the notes and not the music. This has happened to me before I kind of had some revelations where I would go in and I would try to play and figure out what the committee wanted to hear versus showcasing my best self. And that's a huge difference. And even if I played really well in terms of accuracy, I wasn't really playing with the sound that I wanted or phrasing the way I wanted because I thought I was doing this. I thought I was giving the performance that others wanted to hear from me versus what I felt was authentic to myself. Not a great idea in auditions. We only can showcase our true selves, and that's really the best thing we can do. So if our intention isn't to win the job, what is it? Well, I would say that it should be the exact same for a performance, which is to honor the music and inspire and move an audience. In this case, the audience is an audition committee. And it's harder in an audition. It's more challenging because whether you're an actor or a musician or any other person who is normally performing with others, in an audition, we're performing alone. So you may have to read that monologue from Shakespeare completely in a room with no set, no other actors to feed off of. And when we're playing audition music, we're playing often short passages that are very technical in some cases or very lyrical to showcase our ability without the benefit of having the rest of the orchestra. So we have to imagine and embody and bring forward that full orchestra performance, even when we're playing alone on the stage. And this is no different, as I said, than an actor giving a monologue. And so when we're practicing, we can get very, very far into the technical details. I do this in my practice. Where we'll play a fast passage very, very slow over and over and over. And it can get very much into just the notes. And all of that work is done so that we can make music later, right? We have to remember that that's the ultimate goal, is to take that technical work. And the reason why we're doing that technical work is to make the passage as natural and easy to our bodies to execute, right? But that's the first step. The second step is to go in and make music with that. And that's, again, one of the challenges of auditions is how do we make music and embody a full orchestra when we're just one person playing on a stage? It's very unnatural, but it is not a skill that we can't develop. And so I'm going to use an actor as an example to talk about why this idea of winning is kind of absurd when you think about it, right? So if an actor were to go into an audition and say, you know what, I'm going to go in and I'm going to say all the lines with perfect diction, and I'm going to nail every single word, and from this long passage that I've memorized from by heart. And that's going to win me the job because I'm going to be perfect. Well, an actor can't really get away with that. They have to embody a character. They have to show emotion. They have to create authenticity. They have to be believable. So this idea of just technical mastery is kind of absurd when you think about it in the realm of actors. And it's no less so in the realm of musicians. And, I've talked with a lot of musicians, especially about audition strategies. And a lot of folks believe that, well, look, on the first round, you're just trying to get out of the first round. The first round is, in many ways, the largest cliff, right, in an audition. So typically in an audition, if 200 people audition for a job, and this is true in the music world at least, they're not going to advance 100 to the next round, right? It's going to be 200 people probably to 20 people. Maybe 10% or less will get past that first round. So a lot of people think, oh, in the first round, I just have to go out there and play like a machine and be technically perfect. I never subscribed to that because, one, I felt like it was harder to do that than to be musical. And that I thought the committee probably doesn't want to hear that. They probably really want to hear somebody who is making music. So that's an example of how we get into our heads, right? This idea of like, what do they want to hear in the first round? And is it really about perfection? Again, if your goal is to just be your authentic self and to serve the music, you never are going to question that goal, right? Regardless of where you are in the process. And so even taking that example one step further, like a really fine actor on the level of, let's say Meryl Streep. Let's say Meryl Streep is in a production of Three Tall Women on Broadway. I don't think Meryl Streep's ever done Three Tall Women. It's a play that I think is a great play, and I would love to see her in it. So I always think about that. But let's say Meryl Streep is in this production of Three Tall Women, and you've bought a ticket, and you're really excited to go see this performance. And that night, instead of deciding to serve the text and embody a character, Meryl Streep has decided that this is the performance that's going to win her the Tony Award. And so she goes out there and her only goal is to win a Tony Award. How is that going to affect her performance? Is she going to be able to live in the moment? Is she going to really be able to bring this character to life? It's absurd. No actor would do that, right? And so we have to detach from having an intention as a goal, because again, the goal is what happens in the future and it's a result. It's not who we are when we're actually delivering our work. And an intention is internal. It really is who we are, and it is the only thing we can control. We cannot control outcomes. We can only control intentions. Now, this is not to say that we don't prepare in the same way, right? To say that we are detaching from the outcome in the moment, meaning that we're not focused on winning, doesn't mean that we're not serious. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't love to have the job, right? Like that's still a goal of ours, but it means that we prepare in the same way. It has that it's just our intention that's shifting. We're shifting away from I want to win a job to I want to, in the moment, present my best self. I want to present all of the work that I've put into this and showcase my best work as an actor, as a musician, as a singer, etc. And that's all we can control, right? We can't control the outcome. We can only control the intention, and the intention is in the moment. It's not in the future. So our intention can be easily shifted, right? If we have an intention of winning an audition, and instead we replace that intention with, my intention is to capitalize on the hours of hard work I've put into preparing in order to share my best self as I serve the music for this audience, right? Imagine that as a mindset shift, right? And one thing that is really important to remember is that, again, if our intention is external, if it's in the future, it's really about our ego versus our true inner selves, right? And the ego loves to make everything about us and get in our way at all times. And the ego only lives in the past or in the future. And so it loves to short circuit the present, the now, or that flow state. Timothy Galway, in his book, The Inner Game of Tennis, refers to this as the self one and self two, right? The ego, the egoic mind trying to control everything, and then the inner self that is calm and able to just do the work free of any attachment. And Carol Dweck uses a similar model with her fixed mindset and growth mindset paradigm in her book Mindset. So if we audition in this flow state with an intention to showcase our best selves and serve the music, we will always learn from the process, regardless of the outcome. And it will always be an opportunity for growth. And if we see this audition as only a win-lose proposition, then we'll never really learn from the experience, even if we land the job. And I've seen this happen, right? Where people will win an audition, they'll get into a job, and they may not get tenure just because they cannot really detach from that egoic winning mindset, right? Like, and they perform, and when they miss a note, they might get frustrated. They might hit their knee, or they're creating a lot of energy that is not serving the music. It's really about themselves. And it creates an energy that other colleagues don't really want to be around. So we have to not see the audition as this win-lose game. And part of the reason, one of the biggest reasons, is that statistically, the rate of success is very, very low, right? So if you're an actor or if you're a musician, there are hundreds of other people that do what you do who want to also gain that one opportunity that is only going to one person, right? So if you think about 200 people taking an audition, 199 of them are not going to succeed, right? So if we don't approach this in a healthy way and in a way to think about how we can grow from it and how it's benefiting us as artists, then we're going to drive ourselves crazy, right? There's many stories. I think Dale Clevenger, who was the former principal horn of the Chicago Symphony, would talk about how he took 70 auditions, 70, before he landed the job in Chicago with the Chicago Symphony. So if auditions only provide anxiety for you, and if they're only seen as negative, then this is not the field for you, right? But the good news is you don't need to see them that way. We can choose to have another view. So approach the audition with that growth mindset, right? How am I going to learn from this? What can I learn from this experience? And what can I take away from it? And how do I prepare in a way that's going to showcase my best self? And how am I going to work through this in a way where I'm going to feel good about it and not use it as an opportunity to either prop myself up if I win or beat myself up if I lose, right? If I don't advance. So this is, again, really important because you have to break a lot of eggs in this business, right? It's not a business where there's guaranteed success. There are a very few people who are just really, really extremely dedicated and skilled and can land, almost every audition that they go for. But that's not the vast majority, right, of musicians and actors and everyone. So if we're not able to process and learn from and celebrate this audition process, which we can see in one view as rejection, right? Or we can choose to see it as an opportunity to share what we do best, and the audition becomes kind of almost a driver for a lot of excellence, right? It forces us to practice. It really forces us to evaluate what we're doing. Without auditions and performances, we don't have a way to improve. There's no reason for us to make sure that we are at our best. So the audition is really something that we should embrace and not fear, right? And the ego loves to fear. The ego is almost always looking for a way to make us afraid, right? So I hope I get this job. Oh my gosh, my chops don't feel great today. All of these things are the ego trying to get in our way, right? As Timothy Galway, would call that the self one versus the self two. And so I want to talk a little bit about when we should take auditions and when we maybe shouldn't take auditions. So I would say we want to take those auditions that are really in our wheelhouse. So maybe you're an actor who is really skilled at improv comedy, and an audition for a classical Shakespeare theater company may not be the right fit for you. Similarly, a classically trained Shakespearean actor may be really bad for an audition for a situation comedy, right? We all have our lanes. We all have those things that are really play into our strengths. And in my world, as a brass player, I'm a French horn player. In the orchestral world, we have chairs that tend to specialize in the higher part of our register and others that specialize in the lower part of our register, because the horn has such a vast range. So the even numbered chairs are always the lower sort of baritone bass register, and the odd chairs 1 and 3 are the sort of tenor and soprano register of our instrument. So a lot of times French horn players like myself will specialize in one of those ranges. So for me, my wheelhouse is those even numbered chairs. It's the 2nd and 4th low baritone bass kind of rolls for the French horn, if you will. And if I saw an opening for a first horn job in an opera company, I probably wouldn't necessarily go for that, because it's not really my wheelhouse. The work that I would have to put into getting to a level that I think I would need to be at is much harder for me for those jobs than it would be for a 2nd or 4th job. It's just, I have my strengths and I have my weaknesses, like we all do, right? And so we want to take those auditions that really are in our wheelhouse. And we want to take also those auditions where we have the time to really prepare and take them seriously. And I would also add that we want to take those auditions where we are prepared to accept the job, right? The committee, I want to talk a little bit about the audition committee. It is such an enormous challenge, if you think about it, to sit on an audition committee and blindly behind a screen listen to 30, 40, 50 people in the same day playing the same music. It's extremely taxing mentally, and we want to respect the audition committee and the fact that they've shown up to give us this opportunity. And we don't want to take those auditions that we're not serious about taking the job after, right? So when should we not take an audition? I would say, again, we don't want to take auditions for practice. And if somebody takes an audition for practice, like maybe I'm in school and there's a really big opening in an orchestra near me, I might want to take the audition, quote, for practice. Well, I think for practice is a way that we can code for ourselves the fact that either we're not yet developed enough to be at that skill level, or that we're not prepared, or that we're not serious, right? And we don't ever want to go into an audition, even though we're detaching from the outcome. We don't want to go into an audition where we don't have a good chance of success, right? Like, again, I'll use my example. If I don't have time to prepare and I'm taking a very high French horn audition versus a low French horn audition, I'm probably going to go in and crash and burn, and that's not going to be productive. That's not a failure that's productive, right? A productive failure is when I go in and I showcase my best self and I do the absolute best I can, and I maybe get somewhere or I don't get somewhere, or I win the job, I don't win the job. If I don't win the job in that situation, that is a productive failure. I've practiced, I've improved, I've really evaluated my playing, and the audition has brought all these things for me that are going to help my playing. But if I'm not prepared, if it's something that I'm struggling with and I go in and I bomb, that's just going to really kind of damage my self-esteem as a player and my confidence. And there's no reason to do that, right? So don't take auditions for practice. Take those auditions that you truly believe that you have a good chance of success at. And then when not to take an audition, when we're not prepared, right? The absolute worst audition I ever played in my life, and I'm including going back to pre-college and college years, right, was for the Phoenix Symphony. And the reason why it was the worst audition I ever played was because I wasn't feeling that prepared, and I sat in my hotel room the night before the audition with a practice mute in and just slammed excerpts for hours, like maybe 2 hours. And the next morning, it was like my lips just needed maybe an ice pack or something. And I'm not one who really has had a lot of experience where I just overplayed to the point where I couldn't play, but that was honestly what had happened. And I went in and I just bombed because I had overplayed the day before. So if we're not prepared, you can't slam, you can't cram for it, right, at the end. Being a musician, being an actor, we use our bodies and we have to respect our bodies. And in that situation, I just, again, I overplayed, and I went in the next day and played the worst audition of my life. So, and that wasn't the fault of the audition, it was the fault of me not preparing, right, enough, and also not having the confidence. So the other reason we don't want to take an audition is when we feel like we don't have a good chance of succeeding. Again, if it's beyond your reach, if it's a list that's not in your wheelhouse, if you feel like it's just beyond your capability, right? Maybe you're not developed enough. Don't take the audition, right? We don't want to take auditions where we don't have a good chance of success, because again, it's going to affect our confidence, and we're going to practice failure, right? We don't want to practice failure. We want failure to be productive, right? So there's times when I've looked at auditions and said, you know what, this is not a great fit for me. I'm not going to take this audition, and there's nothing at all wrong with that. So I'm at a point in my career where I'm actually not playing full time, but I do play and I teach a little as well, and I still take auditions to this day. And so my ego would tell me, well, you're too old, your time has passed, there's no reason for you to think about getting out there again. But in fact, what I find is that when I decide to take an audition, it becomes this amazing experience to inspire me to be better, right? It's a goal. It provides me a goal musically to practice for, and it makes me really relearn and rethink my playing. And if you are in the arts, especially music, I would say, you really have to embrace the idea that you're going to be a lifelong learner. And we never get to that point where we can just kind of rest on our laurels. And I like to think about artists like, Itzhak Perlman and Yo-Yo Ma, and the fact that people, I think, believe that they got to a certain level and that they just coast, that they just are there all the time. I really believe that Yo-Yo Ma and Itzhak Perlman, like all of us, they have to wake up every morning and work to become Itzhak Perlman every single day, right? Itzhak Perlman, Yo-Yo Ma, they do not get exempt from having to play scales, from having to play long tones, and from working on the fundamentals all the time. This is kind of the blessing and the curse of being any kind of performance-based worker, right? If you're an artist or an athlete or an actor, we're always constantly honing and rebuilding those foundations. So the audition makes me rethink and relearn and grow. And even if I have success or I don't have success in the audition process, there are some extra external benefits, right? So preparing for the audition now gets me in really good shape so that if I get called for freelance work, I'm in really good shape to do well because I'm at my prime. I'm practicing every day. I'm really inspired around music, and it also makes me a better teacher, right? It forces me to again relook at all of these foundations, from breathing, from our buzz, from our posture, all of those things. We force ourselves to really reinvent and relook at our playing from the ground up when we take auditions. So see the audition as a way to inspire you and an opportunity to share your best self. Again, if all of our work as musicians especially is around practicing for performance or practicing for auditions, and if both of those things cause us only stress and anxiety, again, there are many other things and other ways to succeed in life that are less stressful. So we can't live in that moment. Performing and auditions are such a central part of who we are and what we do that if we don't love them and if we don't get inspired by them and we don't see them as opportunities to grow and not opportunities to beat ourselves up, then where are we going to be, right? So that's my advice on auditions. See them as growth opportunities, see them as inspiring performance opportunities, and you will always grow and learn and have a healthy mindset around what can be, for many, a very stressful and anxiety-producing process. Thank you all for listening to this week's broadcast. I'm Michael Manley. Please find me on Facebook or LinkedIn at Michael S. Manley. You can also join my Facebook group, Empowering Musicians, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care.